Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Lou from the Mixing Music Podcast, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys today about Fabfilter's recent release of Pro-Q4. Now, if you know, on my channel over on Mastered by Lou, I've talked about why I believe Pro-Q3 is my infinite money glitch, so to speak. You know, it's the one that makes me the most money because it allows me to work so efficiently that though there's been a lot of other plugins coming out, none of them have really made me go back to it every time the way that Pro-Q3 did. So you can imagine my excitement when Pro-Q4 was announced and released. Now, I want to take you over to what I'm working on and show you 5 things that I thought stood out to me the most, because I've already talked about all the great things that Pro-Q3 did, but Pro-Q4 really brought it to the next level. So, all right, so we're in Pro Tools right now, and I'm going to show you this record called Next to You by Twin Flame. Now, what's amazing about this record is that it gives us the opportunity to listen to something that was intentionally a little bit grungy, a little bit kind of, I don't want to say like cloudy or anything, because I thought the mix already sounded really cool and vibey, but I want to see what we can do to kind of clean it up. Now, this song is something that I had already mastered and used Pro-Q3 on. And once again, if you want to learn about those feature sets, go check out the video about Pro-Q3 on my channel. But what I want to show you is the new features. Now, I'm just going to list out as kind of like my list of priority, like the things that kind of made the most impactful differences for me and the features surrounding it as part of their points. So you're going to get 5, but it might sound like we're talking about the same thing, but these features are available across the board. So first things first, spectral. What is spectral? If we got a dynamic EQ, then we're already dipping specific frequencies. What is the point of adding spectral, and what is it really doing? It's taking the band that we've selected, takes a listen to that entire band, and starts to dip out those specific frequencies and ranges that are actually going over the threshold instead of just doing the whole band being dipped like a traditional dynamic EQ. To give this example, we're going to go ahead and look at this band right here. Now, if you notice, there's a couple other features. Those are going to be the other bullet points, but let's just start with enabling spectral mode. Now, to do that, when you do your dynamic EQ, you just pull it down like always, but you hit this little button right here and it goes into spectral mode. So you can see the difference. This is what it looks like when it's active on a traditional dynamic EQ. I showed up in You see, it affects the entire range of that band that you've selected and set the width of. But with spectral mode, I showed up in my phone. It affects the specific ranges within that band where they're passing the threshold or where it's starting to detect. Right now that we're in auto mode, we're letting Pro-Q4 choose when it reacts within a certain range. But, you know, to be honest, it sounds great and it makes a world of a difference. So once again, I'm just going to let it play without spectral mode turned on. It's just going to be in traditional, dynamic EQ mode where it's affecting the whole band across the board. Just listen to the record, and then when I enable spectral, see how it feels different. I showed up in my form-fitting dress, gliding freely on the dance floor. I was gonna go home, but you caught me by surprise. Didn't even have the words, got the trip, got my breath. We had a good time. See, this is what I like about it. When I had it in regular dynamic EQ mode where it's affecting the whole band equally, it was starting to suck out elements that didn't need to be sucked out, and it was kind of holding whatever else kind of hostage because one range within that band was affecting another one more than the other. And we don't want it to really do that across the board, especially not in a mastering situation. So what I really like about spectral is it focuses quite a bit better. Similar to like how Soothe works. Sure, a lot of people have been making that comparison, but I feel like I'm getting a little more practical use out of this because this gives me a little more free range than that ever did. And because this is built into Pro-Q4, I'm probably going to lean on this a lot more, to be honest. But this is not to say that one is significantly better than the other. This is more to point out the similarity of that, but also how this one is going to give me a little more features and a little more flexibility. Now, what I'm really enjoying about spectral mode is this second point that I want to add, which is they've given us an attack and release on the dynamic EQ section. So it doesn't matter about if it's on spectral mode or not. It could be in just standard dynamic EQ or spectral. But with the attack and release, you get a little more control of how it's responding to those ranges or those, pockets of the range, and, how it's really shaping the character. Now, the reason this is important is because not all dynamic EQs are built the same. That's known across the board. But I feel like a feature that's kind of always been knowingly missing is an attack and release, because a lot of people really like kind of like automatic controls. They usually sound pretty good, but sometimes you just need a little more and you just don't have the control. So I like the option of enabling the control and saying, hey, I just wish it was responding and making the low mids a little bit tighter when it comes to like ducking faster. So that way certain things aren't really poking through, or I wish it held it down a little bit more, because by the time it comes back, you really notice it again. So let's play with the attack and see how quick it's responding and what kind of effect it plays in that range. And let's listen to the release after that and see how it's affecting the overall balance of things. So let's play with the attack first.
I showed up in my form-fitting dress, gliding freely on the dance floor. I was gonna go home, but you caught me by surprise. Didn't even have the words, got the tremble, got my breath. We had a good time. Start heading home, go back to the spot. We can dance just all you want.
See, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I actually like that as you pull it all the way back, like a traditional compressor, it actually doesn't really respond all that much. Like, it might be getting triggered, but by the time it's actually dropped below the threshold, it's actually starting to back off already. So you might get like a dB or two at most on the slowest setting with the same configuration we have. But as you crank it up and really speed things up, it gets a lot more responsive, and you kind of notice that like a little bit of the presence gets sucked out in that range. But, dialing it back and finding your sweet spot's pretty easy with the attack. It's audible enough to make the difference, but with spectral mode enabled alongside it, instead of like the wideband, which we'll take a listen to with the attack as well in a sec, it's still pretty natural. Like, it's not, I don't feel like it's doing so much that it's ruining the record, even at its fastest setting. Now, with that said, once again, we want to respect the integrity of the mix when you're doing a master for somebody, but it's nice to know that, like, if there's something that stands out to you, you can go about it a little bit more smoothly. Now, let's listen to this in regular band mode, and we're just going to go ahead and play with the attack again and see how it responds.
I showed up in my form-fitting dress, gliding freely on the dance floor. I was gonna go home, but you caught me by surprise. Didn't even have the words, got the tremble, got my breath. We had a good time. Start.
Yeah, see, with the attack, I feel like because it's affecting such a wide range already, instead of focusing on the specifics of what's within that range, it takes away a little more than I really would want. So that's where like the power of spectral mode really comes in handy, because sometimes you do want a broad stroke, and sometimes you want just a broad dynamic EQ, which is something we'll see over here and over here. But it's not something that I'm so focused on that it's like, hey, listen, spectral mode gets it a little more fine-tuned, and the attack and release help me kind of like dial in a specific thing that I'm hearing and a specific range. Because sometimes a vocalist can like pitch, can sing a pitch and bend that pitch. And then what was an issue at, let's say, at 700 hertz might have bent up to like 750, but you're not really putting that dynamic EQ at 750 or 700. You're kind of putting it in that range. Maybe you're doing like 650 to 800. But if they bent it, it affects all those ranges equally. And then if you're putting this on a master track or a master fader or whatever DAW you're using and whatever they want to call it, it's affecting that whole range equally. With spectral, if it's just the vocal that's really causing that, it only really focuses on where that vocal is. and takes care of that. And if you want it to respond faster or slower, thankfully that's a feature now that wasn't in Q3. So that was super helpful. Now, going back to spectral mode, because that's where I kind of like this, we also have spectral density. Now, what spectral density does is at higher values, it's actually responding to more narrow bits of information. So it actually kind of narrows down its response range. And by range, I just mean how wide of an area it's actually affecting. And at smaller values, it's actually responding to a wider range of information within that band. So you might see it actually widen out its effect. So just to give a visual example, an audible example, let's just hit play. We'll slide that bad boy back and forth, which is just right here above your attack and release. Feature number 3 is super useful. Check this out.
I showed up in my form-fitting dress, gliding freely on the dance floor. I was gonna go home, but you caught me by surprise. Didn't even have the words, got the...
So as you can tell, I sped up the attack just to kind of like see the response a little more. But as you bring that value higher, it gets very, very narrow and almost surgical. And sometimes that's what you need, depending on what you're trying to go for. But because we're affecting mainly like where the vocals are at, it just doesn't feel right going so narrow. So if we were to bring it all the way to the left, to the lowest value, you'll notice that it actually starts to widen out and it becomes a little more musical of a cut that it's doing. But go too wide and you might start taking, like we talked about just moments ago, like you start taking away more than what you're really intending to take out. So I found that like around like 30-40% is kind of nice for that vocal range where it's like it's not doing too much. You can play with the attack and release and really kind of dial in that perfect little pocket of the setting for your specific, case. In this case, we're doing this record next to you. Like I said, it's already super dope. They're already going for a vibe, and I don't want to change too much about that vibe. And this allows me to kind of like go in, do what I need to do, and not ruin the record by just sucking out everything, by applying tools that just don't have the range of, I guess you could say, the range of tools necessary to get the job done the way that I want to. It's a poor workman that blames his tools, but I'm really happy to see that this tool just got a little sharper, This one got a nice little sharpened edge on it that it was a little bit dull before on that sense when it came to the dynamic EQ, but it just got a lot sharper. So now that we've gone over spectral, the attack and release, and density, let's talk about free range. This is something that I think is really cool. Let's see here. We can apply it to more of the mid-range because I feel like getting a little bit of vocal presence is always going to be kind of a thing. But check this out. Right now, we've got the vocal boosted up, but we want to take it down just a wee bit, because we want a little more presence now that we've kind of ducked out a little bit in the low mids and stuff. I heard a little bit of resonance around like 900-ish hertz. It's about 880. But that doesn't mean I want everything being dipped down. Sometimes we got to give a little back just to keep that presence there. So let's take a listen to that range.
I showed up in my form-fitting dress, gliding freely on the dance floor.
So you see, we're really just trying to add presence to the vocal there. If we bypass this and listen to it without, and then I'll click it back on so you can see the difference it's making.
I showed up in my form-fitting dress, gliding freely on the dance floor. I was gonna go home, but you caught me by surprise. I showed up in my form-fitting dress, gliding freely on the dance floor. I was gonna go home.
So as you can tell, it's not a huge difference. It just kind of feels like it puts the vocal right where they originally had it before I started doing too many cuts. But it does it very smoothly because we're not going for too much. It's only a decibel increase. Now, let's say that we want to bring this down, like I said, down to just the middle so that every time it does duck, it's ducking because we're just going back to where it was. Maybe it just got a little too loud in that range and we're just trying to maintain control. Great. But let's say it's not really that range that's causing it. Now you can actually go to your dynamic EQ, bring it out, And where it says band, you can select it and go into free range mode, which gives you a feature that was found in the multi-band compressor, the Pro-MB, which means that instead of sidechaining to whatever input sidechain you have on the plugin, you can actually sidechain within it. And for Pro-Q4, that's a huge, huge addition, because let's say that it's sibilance or something that like starts to stand out and you just kind of need to make sure the vocal is not too sibilant. You can focus on those S's. Let's say that whenever they sing a low note, they start to get a little bit boomier, and you need that range to kind of trigger a different range to start ducking a little bit. That's cool. But in our case right here, where there's vocal presence that needs to come back, I also want to make sure that it's not going too loud, being that they kind of sing with like a lower tone, to where, you know, we're going to use this range to kind of control when this is being ducked. So watch this. Just check this out. This is awesome.
I showed up in my form-fitting dress, gliding freely on the dance floor. I was gonna go home, but you caught me by surprise. Didn't even have the words, got the tremble, got my breath. We had a good time. Start heading home, go back to the spot. We can dance just all you want.
Cool. So as you can tell, I'm really just focusing on getting a little bit of control over the vocal. Like, I do want it to be boosted like we did, but I also want it to dip down when it's necessary. And as you can tell, I had done a cut once again at 880. And so what I'm using this for is to kind of listen to that range. And once it starts getting past a certain point, I wanted to kind of bring the volume to the vocal down to where it originally was. It's all about just maintaining that pocket for the vocal. So if this wasn't here, let's just take a listen to what it's doing.
I showed up in my form-fitting dress, gliding freely on the dance floor. I was gonna go home, but you caught me by surprise. Didn't even have the words, got the tremble, got my breath. We had a good time. Start heading.
So that's really cool. It smooths it out a little bit. It's a bit more focused. Now, one thing to know, if you haven't done this before with like Pro-MB, but this free range tool is really awesome, because instead of having that band duck when information on this side of it is, you know, going past the threshold, it's really just focusing right here. So you're just being more specific with what it's responding to, just like you would with an input sidechain filter. It's just less work to get it to respond to something, where I've seen people, you know, duplicate a track, filter out a range that they're having an issue with, and then have it trigger from that. They'll just pump that into the input sidechain filter. This takes a whole step of that work out of it. In fact, that whole process is just null and void. You don't need it. So it's just a nice feature. If you were to use it on something like this here, where we chose to go spectral, we did try it out on the actual vocals. So let me take this range off right here. We'll go back to band and leave it alone. We'll go back to automatic. Now, what we did is we went over here to where the S's were. We tried out, okay, do I like it with spectral mode on, or do you want to use free range? Now, with S's, as you can imagine, it's always going to be an issue with different vocalists. Now, just to kind of show you what it sounded like before, we're going to go ahead and bypass these two.
I showed up in my form-fitting dress, gliding freely.
So as you can hear, it's a little harsh. It's a little crispy. But once we got this on, went into spectral mode, check this out.
I showed up in my form-fitting dress, gliding freely on the dance floor. I was gonna go home, but you caught me by surprise. Didn't even have the words, got the tremble, got my breath. We had a good time. Start heading home, go back.
You see, we were able to smooth out those S's with spectral. That's great. if we were to go into free range, I can actually say, hey, listen to these different ranges and respond to that. So check this out.
I showed up in my form-fitting dress, gliding freely on the dance floor. I was gonna go home, but you caught me by surprise. Didn't even have the words, let the tremble got my breath. We had a good time.
See, we got a pretty good use because we're using the lower S's to trigger the higher S's. So we're using, what is this, about like 2K, what is this, 3K to like about like 5K. We're using that to trigger the dynamic EQ at around 7.5K. That's cool. But in the end, it's nice to know that you have options to choose. So in my case, I thought that Spectral sounded nicer, which is why I think that's such a nice feature. The free range sidechain tool is really nice. I like it. It does find its pocket with like guitar tones, drums, things of that nature. You can use like resonance in a drum to kind of trigger a different range of ducking or enhancing. You can use like the thump of a snare to really trigger the crack of the snare to open up with like the expander of the dynamic EQ. But that's why I like that, free range sidechain filter. It's really nice. It's awesome. Let's get on to the next point. Okay, so I'm not kidding when I say that the last thing I want to bring up as a feature set is going to be so, how can I say? It's going to be looked over. It's going to be looked over by a lot of people. I'm not going to lie. But for me, somebody who actually wears glasses, I don't have my glasses right now. I usually keep them in my car to make sure I can see on the road. But I can usually get by here at home and do just fine. I've got some new ones coming in I'm really excited for. And I've got another set coming in 3 months, which I'm also excited for. So I'm a guy that definitely actually likes using his glasses if he can. But I also sit about like 3 feet away from my screen. I don't know if you could see this, but it's pretty far. I really had to lean forward to try to reach it. So with that said, I want to show you the full screen mode. Now, like I said, it may not seem like a big deal, but I'm also the guy who programmed macros for zooming in and out of his screen because sometimes I'm just squinting my eyes trying to see things. Not always are you in a studio where the screen is up close to you, and not always in your monitoring situation is that a very favorable position to be in. So you might have opted to put your screen as far away as you can while still being able to kind of see it and know what you're doing. Well, this feature's for you. This feature is just amazing. So check us out. I'm going to go over to the screen. We're looking at Pro-Q4 just the way it is. And you can just click this little box button right here, and bam, it's full screen mode. And I know that in Streamlabs, it's going to kind of crop the screen in to fit into, traditional, screen size. But if you check out like the camera behind me and look at what I'm looking at, it's actually making perfect use of my widescreen. And that's what I really like about this feature. Yes, it seems like a very minute thing, but making use of a wide full screen kind of gives you a little more motion on your mouse to be a little more specific. So for instance, if we were looking at this and just move the mouse from here to here, if we take that out and we were to actually see the screen here and make that same range of motion, you could tell that that's about 100 to 200 hertz worth of range, that little motion right there. If you're in full screen mode, let's say, bam, where is that button? Here it is. Bam, that same little motion is really just a range of about 50 hertz. It's about 4 times the range, and if you want to be that specific about it on your EQ, you can be. It actually opens up the door for like being that nitpicky. And if you got bad eyes like I do, then this is actually kind of a godsend because once again, if you see this from how I see things, to be honest, that's not a very big window. This whole time we've been working on very large. That's what we've been working on. But even then, seeing these numbers right here, they're a little hazy for me. I can see what they are, but they're a little hazy. So sometimes I'm like, what am I looking at? Realistically, full screen mode. I know it's not everybody's favorite new feature, but I fucking love it. Thank you, Fabfilter, for us with bad eyes that need it. Those are my 5 favorite new features of what's come up. So let's go over it. Spectral, great addition. Attack and Release, great addition. We've got Spectral Density, which is really nice. I know that's part of Spectral, but Spectral Density, they could have just left Spectral at Spectral, kind of like how there was no Attack and Release before. So they went the extra mile and actually put Spectral Density, and I'm counting that as a feature because it does make the difference in shaping the sound that you're after. We have full screen mode and we have full range mode. Those are the 5 things that I'm really excited for. I know it sounds basic, but trust me, the busier you are, those features make the world of a difference, because yes, we can fiddle around with the drawing tool. I do like that. That's kind of cool for creating like rough mix tones. But if I'm just going to change it again in the end, then that's not a feature I'm going to really start with, you know? But it's really cool to see that. Pro-Q4 was something I was waiting for, but they really pushed the envelope on this one. Like, they didn't just give us a couple tweaks. They didn't just change up the user interface and call it new. In fact, I would say the user interface is almost untouched. Obviously, they had to add features, so the user interface got updated, sure, and it is a little bit prettier now. But it's almost like I'm working on the same exact plugin I had before, which, as unflattering as that might sound to some people, that's amazing. So shout out to Fabfilter and the team. Thanks for reaching out to us at the Mixing Music Podcast. And if you guys like what you saw here, then go to Mastered by Lu on YouTube or find me on Instagram. Reach out if you got questions. I'm happy to answer them. I'm just a DM away. So thanks for watching. If you got any questions, leave them down below. I'll be checking it out. I'll talk to you guys soon.